What's up, guys? I'm sure you guys have been wondering why it's taken so long to get an update. What happened was the last video I tried to put up, I tried to upload it 2 or 3 times, even remade the whole thing once, and it keeps coming up encrypted, so it won't let me export it to the computer to put it up on YouTube. So right now I need to go buy a new computer because I'm using an old hand-me-down laptop, and I think it's just not cut out for this anymore. So I have one video that's made. Just need to get the computer and stuff sorted, and probably end up with a new editing program also. But so once that's sorted, that video will go up. You'll probably see it before this one, but this will kind of give you an idea of why everything's taken so long. But in the meantime, I've spent about 2 months on just wiring, and let me show you everything I got going on. This right here is almost everything that I've pulled out of just the body harness. Some of it I've gone back through to take wires out to add to the engine side of it, because I've got the Cyvex ECU mounted where the airbag used to be. It's just a flat stock of aluminum that I drilled some holes in and ran some nuts and bolts. It's pretty solid, so it's not going to go anywhere. And then I relocated the yaw sensor just to an open spot over here. Made this little quick and easy bracket for the CCM. It's just some 1/8 inch bar bent with some washers welded on. And then I had to make some little brackets here and over here to relocate the relay panel, all because running this electric power steering just kind of effed everything up, and I had to cut out a bunch of the factory brackets to get it in there, and now I have the hassle of putting everything back in its place. So the fuse box, pulled a bunch of wires out of it that for systems that weren't being used, like the radio, secondary air injection, and the factory fan module, and all the power wires for that were removed also. So I'm going to switch to a newer style PWM fan. That way the fan speed is based off of water temp, and you can program a slow start so it doesn't shock the electrical system with, you know, all the power to jumpstart the fan on high right away. But coming back to the back side here, you can see I cleaned up the harness a lot. We had a whole lot of splices in this area and over here, and it was just a bunch of excess wire that was just all jumbled together. And since mounting the ECU over here, wire in all these plugs individually. All these wires here I just pulled from all the scrap of the harness. I also had 2 extra engine harnesses from past wrecked cars I had kicking around. So I pulled some extra wires from those also. That's just ran all the way through here to these plugs. I found these on eBay actually, because looking at like motorsport style mil-spec plugs, you could spend upwards of $150 per half. So I found these for $40 a half on eBay, and I had to pick them up because they came with all the pins and everything. I think these ones are aviation intended, but they will work just fine. So this top plug is all engine wiring. That's everything from the ECU. There's a couple on the bottom plug, but this is all going to be for the body harness, your ABS module, your headlights, fan control, horn, all that stuff. That way, you know, in the future, if I ever need to pull the motor, I can just undo this one plug, lay the harness on the motor, and everything will come out. I don't have to undo every sensor independently and flop the whole harness onto the car like you would from the factory. So I'm gonna try to find a smaller one of these, like I think you can get them like a 19 pin, and then run. I got the wiper motor wiring here, and then I ran the wires for my boost solenoid. Got the power wire, the red, and then the blue is the signal from the Cyvex here. And with all the circuits that I've pulled out of the fuse box, it's opening up new areas that I can run wires so I don't have to run separate fuses. So like the ABS module, its fuses were in this guy from the factory. So I completely deleted this, pulled the wires out of the plug, and it was actually just long enough that I fished it back through the harness and was able to plug it into the fuse box and use these 30 amp fuses here. So you can see all the openings now. I mean, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 or 8 openings still to wire in different stuff. I got one that was open that I was going to remove, that I rerouted here to power my AIM MXG dash, this cool guy over here. So, and it has, this is the power harness for it, where we got the power wire, which will connect to this one here, which goes to, I think it's a 10 amp fuse in here. I'll have to see what is required for it. Then we got CAN negative, the ground wire, and CAN positive. So these two, the CAN positive and negative, will connect to these two CAN wires here, and that'll basically give this dash access to all the information in the modules on the car. I do have to code the dash and the Cyvex to the CAN signal, but basically whatever signal that the CAN is transmitting on, you have to program the other components to read the same signal to display the information. This wire here will go to the USB, which will run to the middle of the dash. That way I can plug it into the laptop, and that's how you configure the dashes through its program, the Race Studio 3. Once this is all assembled, I'll have the dash pad on, the steering will be in, all this wiring will be buttoned up, the grounds will be here. I'll clean off a spot on the shell, probably down here, that way there's a solid metal to metal contact with the dash bar to the car shell. That way everything grounded here will be grounded to the car. In the future, if I ever need to pull the dash for any reason, or if I need to sort any issue in here, I can pull the dash as one assembly, because I'll have a plug on this side of the harness, a plug on this side of the harness, and then these plugs here, and I can just pull this whole assembly out of the car and make everything so much easier. I mean, just doing the wiring with this out of the car setup like this has made my life tons easier. I was working on it, crawling in and out of the car. I think I did a couple times, and then pulled the dash out twice and put it back in just to check wire lengths and stuff, and finally just got completely fed up doing that and got smart, set up the jack stands, had some scrap steel that I ran through the dash bar, and it's just been here ever since. And yeah, spent the last month here on my knees just wiring up the Cyvex, getting rid of excess wires that I'm not going to be using, cleaning up the factory harness, repinning the fuse box for new systems, and taking pins out for stuff I'm not using. You can see I got this diagram that I had blown up. Basically, hold on a second. So that's the diagram for the Cyvex pinout. It has all the pin numbers for the Cyvex. Then we got what pins on the factory Volkswagen harness is using, so you know how to pin it out. The extra stuff, extra sensors that I'm running over here. I'm running secondary injection, so I labeled that in here. Get it all wired in, make my life a little easier. And then I had a buddy went through the Bentley manual and wrote down every pin for the factory ECU, the wire color, and a description of what it was, so I could reference back and forth. So I've used that along with this to wire all of this. Plug plate here trimmed and shaped, and it's going to be on the inside of the firewall right here. So I'll open up the holes here so the plugs will be sticking out. So the engine harness will come out on the top, come through here, and then probably branch off everywhere in this area here. And the body harness will come through here up to the radiator support and then power everything up front. The engine harness kind of taped up here. This is just a factory harness. I added in the secondary injection. So here's primary injectors. Here's secondary. I'm going to do the secondary in the runners on the intake manifold. So the idea here is to run the factory R32 injectors in the head, and they'll, you know, easy idle and cruising around. I won't be trying to control, you know, 1000cc injectors, which people do, but this will give me room to grow without any issue. And then I'll have 1000cc injectors in the intake runners across here, that as soon as boost kicks on, those injectors will phase in seamlessly and you won't even know. But just, you know, idle, cruising around, it'll just be on the stock injectors. But I still have to wire in all the new sensors that I got for the motor, which you briefly saw on the wiring diagram, if you could even read that. But so that's what I got here. Got a sensor for crankcase pressure, coolant pressure. So if the head gasket is starting to go and you get some pressure in your cooling system, you can set up a warning. So the dash will flash red with a display, or you can, you know, cut the motor or whatever you want, given whatever parameters you put in. Got exhaust map sensor, so I can check the pressure in the exhaust manifold and see how efficiently everything's running, or if the turbo is, you know, maxed out and can't handle the flow anymore. I found these dual purpose Bosch sensors. Let me pull one out of the bag here. These guys here. So these guys do temperature and pressure in one sensor. So I'm going to use one of these for oil pressure and temperature, and fuel pressure and temperature. And keep an eye on all of that stuff. 3.5 bar map sensor. This will go in the intake manifold, and it has a built-in intake temp sensor on it too. So that's also multi-purpose pressure and temperature. Plug for the map sensor. These plugs are for these Bosch sensors. These plugs are for the AEM sensors. And I opened the boxes and checked, and I saw that these sensors already came with basically a plug kit. So these are just extras. That's another Bosch sensor. And I got another wideband O2. It's just a factory replacement for the Volkswagen stuff, but the Cybex reads the factory O2 sensors, and really it's just a different plug for the different manufacturers. But I ordered two. The company only put one in the box, even though the package slip said two. But they got it handled after one email. They apologized and got another one on the way. But this is a company I found, the Ballinger Motorsports, and they have all the sensors you'll need, harness building materials. They have all of these, what do they have in here? The plugs for the sensors with the pins and everything. You need to wire it in. That way, you know, you're not running pigtails and butt connectors on all your sensors, which is nice when you're building a whole harness. You don't want to have a million butt connectors in it. There's just more points that'll fail in the future. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now with everything going on. I'm still going to finish up doing stuff with the dash here. I need to make the mount for the gauges. I'm thinking, you know, somewhere right around here, probably mount it off of the ignition there. I'm a little on the fence if I'm even going to run an ignition switch or just go push the start on the dash somewhere. But I have the CCM, so I'll probably run the ignition switch anyway, because I gotta have the key fob for the power windows and power door locks and stuff, because you still gotta have some luxury in your car, right? But and also the CCM's modded, so I can roll the windows up and down with the key fob, which is pretty much the only way I can get the car on and off the trailer. Well, actually I can get it on and off. I just can't get in and out of the car with it on the trailer because the fender is in the way from opening the door. So I drive it on, roll the window down, crawl out Dukes of Hazzard style, and then close the window with the key fob and lock the car when it's on the trailer. And I just open it back up with the fob, crawl back in. So hopefully I get this wiring sorted out in the next week or two. Then I can move on to buttoning up the fuel lines and starting the fab work for the turbo manifold and getting the front end done. There's still a lot to do. I'm kind of feeling overwhelmed. I'm supposed to be on the dyno tuning end of March, so not sure how that's gonna go. I guess as long as the car's running and all the systems are in place, the car doesn't have to be done. It just needs to be able to be strapped down and the engine working. So that's the goal for now. Get it running and all the systems in place for, dyno tuning the end of March. So we'll see how that goes. Wish me luck.